Hey Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Tim?
Not too bad, not too bad. You want to introduce yourself to the people who don't know you?
Sure. My name is Bob Nunez. I'm currently the vice mayor for the city of Milpitas. Um, I have been on the city council for 4 years. I'm running for reelection. Prior to that, I was on the school board here at Milpitas Unified School District for 2 years. Um, Prior to that, I was in education for 40 years, my whole career. Started as a custodian, worked my way up um, through all the classified positions, which are non-teaching, but then ended up going into the classroom and then as a principal, superintendent, retired here as the superintendent at Eastside Union High School District, which is the largest high school district in Northern California. Um, didn't get enough, decided to run for the school board and still here in Milpitas.
Oh, that's quite the resume there.
Gives me something to do.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. So I wanted to bring you on for a few reasons. So, one, you're running for reelection. I kind of wanted to get to know a little bit about all that. But also, there's been so much happening in Milpitas lately. So much happening in the world, the state, the county, but a lot of like big things have kind of been happening in Milpitas lately. Um, and so one, we're in a recession right now, and I think it's going to continue for quite a while. And so, just kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
One, I agree with you. I think we were headed into a recession prior to the pandemic and COVID myself. Um, I think that you can only sustain growth for so long. And um, we sort of saw that sort of creeping in. But at the same time, Milpitas is different than most of the county. I think what we saw was that there was growth in the building of commercial properties, residential properties, because we were able to still have land available to us here in Milpitas. Most cities here in Santa Clara County, you had to knock something down to build something new. Not so here in Milpitas. And that allowed us to continue to attract businesses um, and workers for those businesses. So now that the pandemic came, we saw businesses, specifically small businesses, leave. But then, if you looked at like Flex and others, you started seeing them not only having their employees work from home, but also starting to lay off as soon as the federal subsidies quit coming. So I think that one of the major things we need to look at here is how long is this going to be in existence? You know, the impact of COVID, and what does that do to our recovery period here, especially in an area where we are still growing because we're still building homes, still building commercial, which is different than most other cities in this county.
So, yeah, that's actually interesting. Milpitas was pretty unique for a while because you could just kind of build because we had the available land, and I think the last parcel of available land on a larger scale, not like a small parcel, but I think the last available parcel is developed or is in the process of being developed right now. That's the Robeson Homes. Um, but so what kind of made you think that we were going into a recession before COVID already?
Um, I was watching some of the larger companies, corporations begin to, once they moved here and they had established a footprint, begin to start looking at moving to North San Jose and other parts of this county. And when I would talk to them, it really wasn't so much that they were looking for cheaper rents. It wasn't so much that they were looking for better access to freeways, transportation. It was they were looking to consolidate their workforces and their production sites, which told me something was coming, that they had reviewed of their projections with regard to their business plans, and they were not going to need those large um, spaces that they had leased, and therefore Cisco is probably the one that made me really look at it when they got up and left.
Mm-hmm.
To In my opinion, that was really more with regard to they didn't need the space because they could consolidate, save money, and that was an indicator. My first real indicator that something was going to be coming on the horizon that was going to slow down the engine that is the Silicon Valley.
Well, did it bring you kind of any hope that, companies like Amazon and Apple were kind of stepping in to the city and kind of looking towards the city more?
What it did bring me is the opportunity to go talk to those companies and ask them what did we need to have here in the city with regard to infrastructure, the buildings themselves, and availability with regard to mass transportation, mass transit, and so forth to and look inviting enough to bring them here. And after some discussions, it hit me that we needed to take a new look at what we were building. Um, if you look at up and down Milpitas Boulevard and a lot of the older campuses that are there, they're still there, but they're empty.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at where Amazon is here in McCarthy, and look at what was built for Amazon and others that are there, the actual structures look different. They're taller, and that is something that in those discussions with those large companies and corporations, they talked about even back 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that for the kinds and types of inventory for warehousing and manufacturing, the old type of building wasn't something that they wanted to keep see moving forward. The kind of manufacturing they were looking for needed a taller ceiling. The kind of warehousing needed to be taller. Um, and so those persons that built on McCarthy, I think, heard that back then, changed what they were doing, and that brought those corporations into us. And so, in my mind, um, persons that were in planning, persons that were economic development in that department, uh, I believe were listening with the same ear, and were able to make a change to attract those companies.
What's interesting is the kind of like symbiotic relationship between developers, businesses, and the government. Because a lot of the time, you know, people will say like they'll go to you and be like, "Hey, you should really bring in Apple, here.
Mhm.
Like you can just snap your fingers and bring Apple in." But you kind of have to rely on like developers. Developers have to rely on the government, and then the developers kind of have to build something that these companies want to move into, because the government doesn't build the buildings. The developers do that, and so it's this kind of like lots of moving parts all working together, and then hopefully at the end you achieve this great goal. That's and from planning, I've been understanding this for a while. It's just interesting seeing it kind of laid out from your perspective there. Um, Kind of going back to the economy. I know your governing style. You don't spend money just to spend money. You only like to spend money if you really have to. Which right now, that's I'm not. The podcast isn't endorsing anyone personally. I am, uh, but that's on paper. That's what we need right now. We need someone who is really gonna look at how we spend our money. But you know, uh, you said you saw this recession coming. Did anyone else on the council kind of see this recession coming, or were you kind of like a lone wolf on that one?
Um, I'm not sure anyone was, no one verbalized it. And I didn't talk at the city council about it coming. I did in other circles. I talked about it mostly because I go to a lot of different groups, CVO, the Chambers of Commerce, a lot of business groups, and I could hear it being spoken about there. There are builder groups that um, um, are into the development on the commercial side that were already talking about it. And theirs was about how they were seeing the um, commercial development beginning to shrink and just being put on hold. Still purchase of land, still the plans being developed, but then not following through on the building itself, putting everything in place, but things being put on hold. And then in talking to them, what they were saying is there's the sense that this bubble is going to burst. Um, and the time then to do the building is then because they felt that everything's going to was going to roll back and cost could be cheaper just to build the facilities. And persons might be more willing, corporations, to look at different cities, movement, things of that sort. But we weren't talking about that so much at the city council. For me, though, it was an opportunity to look at the economic development department. And so at that time, one of the things I talked about to the council was adding staff to that department because, from my point of view, it was important that we had that department staffed up to go out and look for those companies, those corporations that were ready to move because we did have properties that I could see being made available to them uh, to either knock down and start over or just the vacant land and bring them into Milpitas so that we would be able to benefit from the dollars they would bring in, sales tax or the TOT or whatever that was going to be. Therefore, we could benefit in the downturn.
Yeah, actually, new developments bring in quite a bit of different sources of revenue, which is good. You have the sales tax, and not just like you go to a store and you get charged like a cent for sales tax, but with these some of these commercial companies, you have like the really large business to business transactions where the city can actually get quite a big cut uh, of the purchase. So moving forward, where you saw it coming, a recession hit anyway for a completely different reason that not many
Right.
people saw coming. um, so where do you think we go from here?
So I do think we're going to have a recovery. I think that the federal government has already shown they're willing to step in and assist both small and large companies. I think that they've also shown that they're going to help individuals. I think after the election, they're going to continue to do that. So what we need to be able to do is demonstrate that we have a plan, that here's how we're going to help the unemployed, here's how we're going to help those that have been displaced, and then here's how we're going to help those companies, either large or small, re-engage into employment, and also those companies that have held their own but need some assistance in getting geared back up to go like to the next level. And when I say that, um, it is those companies that have had ideas on the at the next step to go into manufacturing, the things that we say we'd like to get back into, but they need assistance in acquiring the properties to do that. And if that's a plant or whatever, and I think we have that up and down Milpitas Boulevard. If it is something to do with acquiring staff that is employees that are trained, I think with the community college district that's right there in downtown Milpitas, along with the adult ed training by the school district. We are quite capable of going into any corporation in the city and training their staff to a level that they will find they can be competitive with anybody, not only in the United States, but in the world.
That sounds all pretty good. Um, there's always just kind of that like what if, um, and I know. Well, even Milpitas is kind of trying to take a step with that kind of what if. What if it takes longer?
Mhm.
What if things don't quite come back the way we want them to? Because what you described is very possible, but that's also kind of a best case scenario at that point. And so, well, best case scenario is ever probably something completely different, but that's probably the most realistic best case scenario. Um, the city, lots of controversy around it, but the city wants to kind of raise the sales tax 1/4 of 1 cent. Very minuscule amount that probably most people won't even notice. But there's a lot of talk about it right now, and I do know that you support this. And personally, I support it too. I live in Milpitas. Um, a couple things, and I'm gonna let you say your piece about it because I know I know you have an answer kind of brewing in there for this, but not only it's 1/4 of 1 cent. That's not a lot of money. For every $4, it's going to be a penny. That's not a lot of money. But if I'm not wrong, even if it passes, we will still have one of the lowest sales tax in the entire Bay Area. I know Mountain View is higher. I know San Jose is a bit higher. I don't know all the percentages off the top of my head, but is to the best of your knowledge, is that pretty true?
That's true. So I'm supportive of the sales tax. I am. And I am probably calling me fiscally conservative would be a good label for me. At the same time, it would be you'd be mistaken to say what that means is I'm against all taxes, that I don't like spending money. When you use that label with me, what it means is I just want to know that we have the dollars to spend when we spend them, and that we're spending them in the manner in which we told you we were going to. So at this point, there's a number of things with that sales tax that I asked for before I agreed to vote for it. Number one, there's an actual limit that cities, all agencies can collect. If this passes, in fact, we will hit that limit. But if it doesn't pass, and say another agency in this county passes theirs, we will not be able to raise ours again because the limit will have been hit. So we won't be able to benefit from that again. We will be stuck at the lower limit unless the state legislature does something different.
And real quick, when you say if another agency raises theirs, are you talking about another city or another entity that charges tax?
Yeah, the county.
Okay.
Or VTA, or one of those agencies that encompasses us, and there's some on the ballot. So if they get their sales tax passed and we don't, we now have reached the threshold, and we won't be able to, number one. Number two, I'm a firm believer that if you're going to tax, I'll start with me. If you're going to tax me, give me a voice in what you're going to spend those dollars on. And so we've done that. Number two, give me an opportunity to check you in what that you're going to do what you said. So I'm thankful that the council agreed with my recommendation to put in an oversight, citizens oversight board that are going to be able to see where the dollars are that's coming in from this sales tax, and match those expenditures against the sales tax that comes in. We said we're going to spend it on public safety and on this and on this. Hold us to that. Don't let us spend those dollars some other way. And come back and report to the city council. We looked at the dollars collected. Here they are. You said you were going to spend it in these areas, and you did. Or we don't agree with you spending it in this one area. It didn't match, and let us correct that. So in my mind, um, it allows us to look at the dollars we collect and spend it in a manner that really hits the higher priorities that were found in a survey we took of all the citizens.
And so, what would those priorities be? Most of them.
Public safety,
Okay.
and then in the how we look at the services that we provide, those being to the seniors, to the parks and recreation, and those are the ones that I think stand out right now. But also, I think one of the things we would look at is the general upkeep of these roads and streets within our purview. So not so much Calaveras, which is a state street, not Montague, which is a county road, but all the other ones, which really are you need if you're going to be able to go to work, and those kinds of things. You want to make sure that our roads are well maintained.
Well, yeah, especially now because we have so much new development. There's going to be a lot more cars on the road, and you know, actually, I've noticed Milpitas is doing quite a bit of road maintenance right now to kind of taking advantage of a lot less cars being on the road, which is pretty cool. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the fact that there's oversight. Um, and of course, I like the fact that the residents get to vote on it. Um, and kind of the grim truth that I kind of see in this is we can either you know suck it up and pay one more penny for every $4 that we spend,
Mhm.
or if someone's breaking into our house at midnight, instead of police getting to our house in 2 minutes, it could take 4 or 5. And
That's
that
right.
that's the grim kind of truth that I see with this, and people don't really want to hear that. And it's kind of a dramatic situation, but it's also very realistic. Right now, it's if I called the police right now and said there's someone in my front yard, they'd be here in 2 minutes. At work, I work in Milpitas, and I've had to call the police before, and they've showed up literally in like 2 minutes. It's crazy, and that's I feel like that's one of the main things on the line. There's a lot of other things like just jobs in general. We don't want to furlough any jobs. We don't want to lay people off. We don't want to all this stuff. But what's really going to affect everyone in the city is public safety response time, and I feel like that's like the most important thing here.
Oh, I have to tell you that I agree with you 100%. I talk about two things whenever I talk about this tax and about public safety, because the example you use, it always hits home when it's your example. Uh, in on the fire side, my mother-in-law, we brought her up here from Southern California to live with us. She took a fall, and it was the firefighters from Station 3 that came to help us. I have never experienced that before, and they were able to help us get her up off the floor because I couldn't do it. Able to transport her to the hospital, make sure that my wife and I were okay because we were not handling it well. And I truly believe they saved her life. And you were correct. They were there in under a minute. I mean, I was
Wow.
shocked how quick they got there. And the doctors told us if it weren't for them, she would not have made it. Um, I still remember to this day that um, here at we were driving back from Los Angeles, um, and I get this phone call from the police department, uh, and they said, "Bob, Um, did your alarm go off, on your app? And I said, no. And they go, well, we're at your front door. They showed me on their camera. My front door was open. And I thought, wow. Um, Luckily, I have a screen in front of it, but um, turn around. We got here as quick as we could. Um, what amazed me is they got there, you're correct, in 2 minutes
Yeah.
from the time the alarm hit. Nothing was taken, but the thought that um, they got there that quick, were able to contact me for me to get here. I remember at times in other cities that I lived in that I found out after my house was cleaned out that somebody had been inside my house. I can tell you that we have the best police and fire, I believe, any place, not only in this county, but in this state. Um, and if it is truly 1 cent, it is worth it.
Yeah. No, I 100% completely agree. I'll tell you a story really quick. So I don't know if you remember this. I think it was last year. It was last year. There was a shooting on 680 by the Burger King that was fatal.
Hmm.
Um, and this guy, he caused a lot of trouble until he messed with the wrong park rangers, and they took him out. But so the funny thing about that is I was at Burger King. I was in the drive-through. All my windows were down, and so it was on the 680 on ramp off Landis, right there. Uh, so for people who can't picture that, I'm about 10 to 15 feet away from the on ramp. There's nothing separating the drive-through at Burger King from the on ramp, except some bushes. And I remember I saw this car pull over into the side, and I see someone walk up and fire 9 shots into the driver's seat
Hmm.
with the guy in there. I was literally like 10, 15 feet away from this looking at it. And the crazy thing is I knew that one of two things were going to happen. Either he was going to just run away, or he was going to look in my direction, see that I had a car that was on, and come and do the same to me and take my car and get out of there. I'm very fortunate that he just ran away. He didn't come up to me. But I watched that whole thing happen. So I called 911, obviously, and I was somehow sent to San Jose. I was on the border. That's on the border of San Jose and Milpitas. So I was actually sent to
Hmm.
San Jose dispatch. San Jose was just like, well, that's not in San Jose, so we can't do anything about that. Sorry. And they transferred me to Milpitas. And Milpitas was like, wow, okay, that's actually Highway Patrol. That is not Milpitas because it's on the freeway. But you know what? We're going to send units out there anyway because that sounds serious. They didn't send 1 unit. They didn't send 2 units. They sent out 4. So 2 went to the on-ramp. And then 2 others were searching surrounding areas. And then after they dispatched Milpitas, then they transferred me over to CHP, Highway Patrol, and then I was able to talk to them, and then CHP was able to send out some guys too. The crazy thing is CHP took forever to get there because they have a lot of ground to cover. But Milpitas, they sent them out instantly, and they sent out 4 units. And that was a just response because it was just kind of crazy. I just watched someone get murdered right in front of me. Not just like, stabbed, or he was shot 9 times in front of me. And, it was very nice knowing that Milpitas Police was on it. And the way I see it is that's what we're voting on. We're voting on, is Milpitas going to be able to handle situations like that in the future? And don't get me wrong, I know our police chief. He's a great guy. He knows what he's doing. And he'll make it work, but making it work sometimes means, instead of 2 minutes to get to the person who's trying to break down your door. It's going to take 3 or 4. And those extra 2 minutes could mean your life.
I fully agree. I fully
Yeah.
agree.
And so, and this sales tax is it's a very important thing. It's a very small measure to maintain everyone's safety. I mean, we've been having tons of fires lately because of either PG&E or the heat or lightning. We had a freaking lightning storm, a dry lightning storm that set multiple fires. You don't know what's going to happen. And with our population growing, we need to make sure that we can keep our public safety, funded and all that. So I don't want to rant on
So,
about
so,
that
so
too
I,
long.
no, no, but I agree. And one of the things that I tell people, so I believe when this passes, we're still going to have to tighten our belts, but
Hmm.
I want to tighten them in areas that don't involve our public safety. I don't want to give up um, um, either your property or your life versus someplace else. Um, let's look other places to make reductions or cuts, but not on when it's late at night and who's lurking out there in the shadows.
Yeah.
There's We want to make sure that everyone's safety is at a level that we're comfortable in the city where it's always been safe.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Um, so that kind of makes me. So we talked about the sales tax and why we think it's a good thing. Um, and personally, I think the sales tax will end up helping rebuild the economy when we kind of get back to somewhat of a normal, because we won't have to be stressing over as much over can we fund our police officers and our firefighters and all that. We won't have to kind of stress about that as much, and that will open the door up to be able to do a little bit more economic recovery for others, for people, for businesses. And Milpitas has really, stepped up and did their best to help. But if we don't have the funds, we can't give out any funds. If they're not there, we can't spend them.
Right,
um,
right.
and so there's a lot of other aspects to the sales tax that are really important. But those right there, that to me that says enough. But I kind of want to move on a little bit, and I need to pick your brain about this Project Home Key. That has been a hot button topic around here. And thank you for taking this one. The Planning Commission is happy to give this one up. We had the last few.
Okay,
We're happy to pass on this one.
good.
So yeah,
So,
let's pick your brain. What are your thoughts on all this?
um, so I want to let me give a little history first. I think that the city was um, wise in establishing a housing subcommittee. Um, at the time that COVID hit and persons really weren't able to meet all of their commitments on rent, we established a housing committee that we put into place with both general fund dollars and CDBG dollars, federal dollars, assistance to those with regard to helping them pay their rent. Then we went into other areas to assist those that didn't have um, dollars available to them simply because they didn't have their hours were cut, they lost their jobs, things of that sort. And the intent really was to keep the roof over their heads. Um, I look at Project Home Key, which is an extension of Project Room Key, which is trying to provide a roof over the heads of persons that are houseless, homeless. And um, I think I have understood for quite some time that to really try to assist anyone to um, stay um, out of or to stay into a place that they can call their home or a house and to not live on the streets. It takes a roof and services that allow you to put um, um, your life in order to then go out and get a job and do these other kinds of things. Um, the, I think at the same time, Project Home Key, when it was passed by the state legislators, ended up putting in a provision in there that really jumped over local jurisdictions, such as cities, that said, um, we're they're not going to be allowed to follow your permits, your zoning, and things of that sort. To me, I've seen that now. My 3 years, 3+ years on the city council, that has been something I have seen um, over and over again. An attempt to take that portion with regard to zoning and move it up to the state level. And I hear this all the time that the only way to deal with um, the houseless, to deal with placement of persons that want homes and such that are living on the streets, to that cities won't do that, and to then take it up to the state level. One, I don't believe that. I think that some of the measures taken already by the city will show that we do care and we are doing something. At the same time, I don't believe we're doing enough. We're slow, but I think a lot of cities are slow. Um, I do think what we need to be doing right now, looking at this one project, Home Key, um, I think the county could have actually held their public input meetings much sooner than they are. But I am glad they are doing that now. Excuse me. I also think that as a city, um, we should have um, asked them, prodded them to do it also. Um, Even though we didn't have a say in the project, because it's a partnership between the state and the county, I still think we could have said, you know, even though we're not a party to the partnership, it's still our city, and our citizens should be heard. And as I read the newspapers, I think every place they have put one of these projects, this is the issue that comes up everywhere. Uh, the citizens and the city say we're not being heard. So in my mind, the Project Home Key is no different than any other project. It needs the residents around it, and the residents from the whole city should be heard. But I think more than just heard, I think every city should be looking at what are they doing to assist those that are unhoused. Every city should have their own plan. They should be putting some of their own dollars into that plan. And then they should be seeking out partnerships with the county and the state to assist with providing assistance to those um, that find themselves without a roof over their heads. But they should also know their own limitations. As a city, we're not going to be able to provide the same level of assistance that they do at the county level, such as mental health services, behavioral health services, things of that sort. So there needs to be a really tight partnership. At one point, I was the chair of the behavioral health board for the county, also vice chair for the social services department for the county. And so I do know what those departments have to offer. And I think we could have a very strong partnership if we took what they had to offer, matched them with what we're willing to do. And we could do some things that would really benefit those unhoused here, especially when you look at those that are part of Milpitas Unified School District, the students and the families. So this home key, I think this project itself could be used to reinforce the fact is that we need to be party to anything that goes on in our city. Number one. Number two, I think that it should be an indicator to us that we need to be working on our own plan. Uh, and I think that those dollars that are coming for that plan to the county and from the state and from the federal government, that's where the dollars originated. We should be looking at not only saying, listen to the citizens, we should be developing a plan now that we could go to the county and say, what about A, B, and C? Let us develop a plan that we could utilize those dollars now. I don't like to be a person that simply complains about what happened. Let's develop something now. And there's time. I believe that we could be well within this process. We have a number of state assembly persons and senators that could help in this process. And I don't believe we utilize them at all. And we need to be able to do that. If we're going to be complaining about this outcome, that's not enough. We need to be able to say, this is what we want. And I don't know. I do know we've not done that.
In a perfect world, the county would come up to you guys, the city council, and be like, hey, we have X amount of dollars. We want to buy a hotel and we want to convert it into long-term transitional housing for the homeless. We have a few ideas on where we could buy it, but let us know if that works for you and the surrounding areas. And also, if it doesn't, let us know what places will, and we'll look into it. In a perfect world, that's what would happen. And realistically, that's what should happen because, you guys have the relationships with the residents of Milpitas, the business owners, even the homeless people. I mean, I know tons. I have conversations with tons of homeless people in Milpitas and who could really benefit from this. And there's a few things that bother me about this project. One, as a planning commissioner, it always makes me a little upset when people go past the planning commission. That's just personal. But what I'm seeing a lot from residents here in Milpitas, and they're saying like, oh, housing for the homeless, I don't want a crackhead near me. I don't want, this near me. I don't want a crazy person near me. It's like, yeah, you have a couple out there, but have you ever even talked to any of the homeless people in Milpitas? Like, most of them have jobs and, it's expensive to live here. And, maybe it's not a great job and they don't have the training to get, a higher paying job. I know some who work at Lucky's or some who work at Safeway, and you would never guess that they're homeless, but they are. And at the end of the day, when they clock out, they get into their car, they drive somewhere somewhat safe, and they sleep in their car. It's like, that's a homeless person just as much as the person who lives on a street corner, in dirty clothes, and so I do not like when people lump them, all homeless people, into the category of crazy crackhead. I do not like that at all. That being said, it's worth listening to people who have concerns about a homeless shelter, long-term housing opening up right next to them. And you almost have to understand that there's a level of not in my backyard people who they just don't want it anywhere near them. It's like the people who they're so willing to help, but as soon as it gets close to their house or something, they're just like, no, we can't have this. You have to understand, and you have to also understand where they're coming from. It's not that they just hate people being near them. It's, there's sometimes legitimate concerns coming from there. We dealt with this when the La Quinta Hotel was coming, towards us, and you guys caught the tail end of all that with the appeal. But there are real concerns there, and this could be just a great project. if it was handled better. And I think there was some dropped balls in Milpitas, and I think there was a lot of drop balls in the county. But going back to one thing you said earlier, um, you're seeing these issues pop up wherever they plant these. And so, yes, the city can always be more proactive, but it's also just like, hey, by the way, there's this bomb that we're just placing in your lap. Have fun when it explodes, and we'll see you later.
So you are the part that I got from that, and that you're correct on. We're going to have more opportunities, and the reason I say that, and I think I said this at the city council, 2 city council meetings ago. Whatever happens with this one, the home key one and extended stay, we will have more opportunities because the government agency, the county that owns, if it owns property within your city limits, we no longer have the zoning rights. It comes underneath their purview. So the property that's off of 880, that's theirs right next to, used to be South Bay Honda. They get to decide what goes there, not the city of Milpitas. So that's important to remember, because that's right now is commercial property as we have zoned it. Number two, we have already have an agreement with the county for Sango Court to be housing for, we believe it's family housing, but we've not come to any real agreement of the kinds and types of services and things of that sort. So I believe there's at least 2 opportunities coming before us. And so, though right now we're talking about home key, we should be developing a process now to include the community in both those areas, but citywide also. And what are we going to do in first Sango Court? Because that we know what's going to go there, but what it should look like, as well as other properties. VTA, as you probably know, has property still left over from building the BART station. They are under, I'm not sure I would say a mandate, but they're under some provision to provide housing, public housing on properties. They're doing it in San Jose right now. And so my question is, have we actually gone and talked to them about those properties they have within Milpitas? And do they fall under the same law that says, since they are a quasi-government agency, do they fall outside of our zoning laws or not? To me, those are all, that might be a third opportunity to go through the same process. The school district has lots of property within the city of Milpitas. I know they fall outside of our zoning. So as I look at it, Home Key just brought to light that there's many things, many areas that this could be a possibility. So we should be preparing a plan of how we're going to deal with this issue going forward. Yes, deal with Home Key now, but we should be, and who should be doing that is, I believe, during this general plan update, the Planning Commission and the City Council. Because one of those properties is the old bus terminal in the middle of the Great Mall.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh
right.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I like your build up to that. That was good.
And I don't have an answer. I'm just saying is what Home Key did. was, to me at least, did two things. And you're correct. On one side, the social justice side of me says we need to help those persons because they, in my mind, are they are residents of Milpitas. They just don't happen to have a roof over their head, so we need to be helping them. On the other side, they've also brought to light that we need to provide everyone else opportunities and a plan of what we're going to do with all this other property that I believe when I first was elected, that we had the right to zone um, every piece of property in Milpitas, and now I'm finding out we probably really don't on very specific properties. We should know that and then start planning now.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you. Um, and there's actually quite a few things in government right now where it's like something really like dramatic, kind of exposing what could happen, um, and what a certain person who, like, let's take, I don't know, like the president for example. It's just like, oh hey, he can do that. I guess he can just do that. I didn't know that, but now I know. um, so the county can just buy up plots of land in the city. They can do that, and now we know. um, and that's something that we've probably had to think about in the past. Before my time, before your time, but this one now, it's like Milpitas residents feel it. I feel it. I can't even tell you how many times I've been asked to deny this, even though I play less of a part in this whole thing than you do. This doesn't even come across my desk at all. But I still hear about it. So yeah, this is just a very, very interesting thing here. So at the end of the day, from what I kind of heard from you is you support a project like this, but it was just done in kind of a poor way. That led to a lot of issues, and it's hard for the city council to kind of put their stamp of approval on this. And we have city council members of all different perspectives and types, and who have all kinds of different opinions. You and the mayor have very different opinions on a lot of things, and Councilmember Dominguez and the mayor, they almost never agree on anything. But that's okay, and that's a democracy. It's good that we have these different perspectives and opinions on things. But what was crazy to me is that it was a unanimous vote that kind of said, please rethink this. And that really says something.
Well, I think it does because at the end of the day, we may have different opinions about the project, but we all agree that we all need a voice, and we none of us believe that we got that voice, and that none of the citizens got that voice. And I'm thankful that tomorrow, tomorrow night, there's going to be public comment taken at a meeting that's being hosted by by the city, by Jamboree, who is going to be the operator and the owner of that property, and by the county. I'm hoping that they listen, and whatever comes out of that, they hopefully move to implement and include. But it tells me that at least they were willing to include all of the three entities together, and that was missing from the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just waiting to see what happens from that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go, but I'll have you know you're more than welcome to come on this podcast anytime. I'll definitely be bugging you to come back. Maybe I can get on yours soon.
There you go. You are somebody that I would like to talk. One of the things you should know, I'll leave it with this: that the first time, my very first city council meeting, I remember hearing recommendations from the planning commission. They said from the planning commission, and then we listened, and I remember asking, Well, if we already had the planning commission deal with this, why are we hearing it? And it took me 3 or 4 meetings before I asked for a joint meeting of the planning commission and the city council. And they said, Bob, we used to have those. And I said, well, what I heard at the last meeting was that the planning commission was following through on the philosophy of the city council. And my comment simply was, no one's asked me my philosophy. So how are they following through on our philosophy? And so we had a meeting 2 months later. All that to be said, the conversation that's going to be held Thursday night, the conversation on the sales tax that I wanted built in, and the one we're having tonight, I'm a firm believer that meeting with persons, I don't care if it's in person, on Zoom, on the phone, if you don't have those conversations, you're just guessing what the other person wants and what the other entity wants. You need to
I
have
completely
those.
agree.
And so thank you very much for inviting me, because I think I better understand, and hopefully those that watch will better understand me.
Yeah, most definitely, and the second something else pops off, what, like next week? That's when crazy events are happening. That's how
Yep.
often they happen now.
Yep.
I'll have you right back on, and then hopefully one of these days there'll be no crazy stuff, and we can just talk about different different perspectives on policy coming from someone who's right down the center, not Democrat or Republican, to a fellow Republican as yourself. Um, you know,
Sounds good to me.
one of the good ones, one of the good Republicans, I'll say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. You take it easy, Bob.
You too. Bye bye.